Good afternoon. Today is Monday, the 21st of July, 2025, just after 1 o'clock. Welcome to UK Column News. I'm your host, Brian Gerrish, and I'm delighted to be joined today by Diane, Rasmussen, McAdie and Ben Rubin, both coming in on live link. So welcome to you both to the news. I'd also like to say we'd hoped to give you a sunny Plymouth today. It certainly started off that way, but as you can tell from the view behind me, we're into a little bit of rain and grey sky, but not to worry. Now, today's news, we're going to really be having a good look at what's happening in UK. Many people feeling very uneasy at the moment. They know something's wrong in the country. They know that there's a sense of falling apart, of breaking down. Sometimes this is echoed back by the press. We're going to try and take people through what we see happening, and we're going to explain some of the things going on. So I'm going to be taking a look at the NHS very quickly, just a moment. Ben is going to be having a look at Shattered Britain, a report talking about the state of the country. Very interesting. Diane is going to be delving into people who are active, and in Durham recently, councillors have voted out climate change and they voted in improved care for children. And we're also going to be having a look at claims for Christianity back in Britain. That's by our old political friend Danny Kruger. And last but not least, I'm going to be having a look at the French press giant AFP and a curious email we received a little while ago. But let's start off with a trip to A&E at Thetford Hospital, Plymouth. This is a little video I shot at the end of last week. Let's have a look. So this is my experience of a visit to accident and emergency at Thetford Hospital. When you come out the car park, you're faced with building works everywhere. Now, this is part of a expansion at Thetford Hospital, but the point I'm making in this report is that this is what people were faced with if you try and come to accident and emergency. This is the main entrance to the hospital, dominated by Marks and Spencer. We've got adverts for abseiling, but what we haven't got is any directions to A&E, which is at the down this road here with traffic controls. I was actually forced to stop in the road to speak to the workmen to ask them how I could drop the person I was with off at A&E. They were kind enough to let me come down this road. And while I'm looking at the chaos to my left, great areas of open parking space with nobody there apart from the police. Meanwhile, for the public, utter chaos in crammed car parks. And everywhere noise and bustle and building works. And this is the final little bit that takes you across the road towards A&E. So this is where the ambulances have to come in, and you can see some of them parked in front of the A&E building. We've got a mixture of everything from police to hospital staff to the workers. So the harsh reality is utter chaos when you try and bring somebody to accident and emergency. Here's the board inside, 11 hour, 52 minutes for the longest wait. But to be fair, triage moved very quickly while we were there, but altogether we were waiting from 9:15 in the morning till 5:20, and the television was pure propaganda from the BBC on the failure of Britain. Thetford Hospital, Plymouth. Well, there you are. Now, to qualify that video, this is the start of a £200 million improvement scheme to Thetford Hospital. So some of you might say, well, of course there's going to be disruption. Yes, that's true. But my point is that trying to get to A&E, a very serious place for many people to get to, was virtually impossible. I needed help from the workers who were on site, and very good they were too. And then once we were in A&E, we were subjected to noise, open doors, dust, ceiling tiles being taken down. This was not a clean medical environment. This was utter chaos. And of course, is the £200 million improvement going to be enough? Well, who knows? Because of course, Plymouth is determined to become one of the world's super cities, and it's already looking to increase the population of Plymouth dramatically, first of all to 300,000, but it's even been suggested to me that by 2070 the population is going to be 500,000. So will the NHS facilities being built even cope with these crazy increases in population in UK? My opinion is not. Ben, let's bring you into today's news because you're on the case with this report about a shattered Britain. Very interesting document, but I'm going to encourage our audience today to think, is the decline of Britain just accidental, or is this country under attack by its own government? And you will know, if you're a regular UK column viewer, that it's the opinion of UK column, we are under attack by our own government. Ben, welcome.
Thanks, Brian. Hello, everybody. I've got to say, Brian, that looked like one of the most stressful things I've ever seen, going to the hospital. A&E should be somewhere where people can seek solace and care. And I mean, just the pneumatic drills on the way in. I mean, that was absolutely appalling. So anyway, an example of the shattered Britain that we are living in, right? So I'm going to talk a little bit about this recent report came out last week or the week before, Shattered Britain, making sense of what Britons want in a country that feels broken. It's the subtitle. I'd actually think it doesn't feel broken. It is broken, actually, and it's been broken largely by the people circulating around this report. It's been brought to us by More in Common, which is a charitable organisation funded by Open Societies, Robert Bosch, European Climate Foundation, the usual suspects. They say that their mission is to understand the forces driving us apart, find common ground, and bring people together to tackle shared challenges. But I'm not really getting that from this report, to be honest with you, and not just because of the title. A little bit more about the organisation. It was founded by Brendan Cox, who is, or was, should I say, married to Jo Cox, the Labour MP who was murdered tragically in 2016 during the Brexit campaign. Her sister, Kim Ledbetter, is behind the assisted dying bill, been very high profile over the past year since the election. And Brendan Cox was interestingly remarried in 2023 in a ceremony which was officiated over by Justin Welby. So there's a really sort of interesting mix of people around Brendan Cox, this organisation, and this report, to be honest with you. You know, when I looked at that, I found that all rather strange. The report, as I said, it kind of breaks the country up into tiny little pieces. They talk about these 7 segments from top to bottom, going essentially politically left to politically right. So we've got the progressive activists, incrementalist left, the established liberals, sceptical scrollers, rooted patriots, traditional conservatives, dissenting disruptors. You get the picture. Just going to read the report. We'll provide a link to it. You can get a sense of who they're talking about. I think the heartening thing for me is that basically 67% of the country are not in this top group. That's Labour heartland, the progressive liberal world. Only 33% of the population fit into those categories, which means that the rest of us don't, quite frankly. And a lot of this is about politics, right? Let's be completely honest. We've looked at the provenance of the report, where it's come from, but also a lot of what gets talked about in the report. Yeah, so it says that Britain's political map is fundamentally changing as frustration with the status quo is leading to traditional two-party loyalties collapsing into a volatile multi-party system. Yeah, and we can see this playing out right now with the emergence of new political parties seemingly every week, to be honest with you, whether that's on the left with Jeremy Corbyn and Zara Sultana launching their, I believe, still as yet unnamed radical left-wing party, or on the right with the ever-expanding Habib, Lowe, Farage, whoever else is going to step into the arena next, axis, right? And this feels like deliberate breakdown. They're warning that we're heading into volatility and chaos, but actually it strikes me that this report is about carving up political fiefdoms so that these kind of micro parties can take their own piece of the political pie and preside over it. The report was launched last week formally. Ed Miliband was there, helpfully pointing out the fire exits in case the venue spontaneously combusted due to climate change. He also had liberal media titans like Emily Maitlis there, plus some bloke off the telly who I vaguely recognise, centre-left, and also Kemi Badenoch, who is running what remains of the Tories, which kind of is one of the reasons why I feel like this is a political action, essentially. You know, these people like the chaos and the breakdown. They feed off it, both financially and politically, and they're creating their own little fiefdoms within the segments defined in the report. And despite the fact the organisation behind it is called More in Common, there isn't really much to unite us. Yeah, although we are united by our distrust of politicians, quite entertainingly, given who was at the launch event. So 75% negative perspective on politicians across the whole population, but also, rather encouragingly, 42% positive on our neighbours. So we distrust politicians. We like our neighbours. Maybe that's why the politicians are so obsessed with getting into neighbourhoods and kind of trying to attach themselves to local neighbourhoods at the moment. Interestingly, we also have a universal dislike for news journalists and big businesses, and also for some reason, if we can get that back on screen quickly, we can see people trust judges. I think that's probably because most people don't come into contact with the judiciary very often, and the scientists have somehow remained unscathed despite all what's happened over the past 5 years. So that's rather surprising to me. The category that I'm quite particularly interested in is the one in the middle. You can see the established liberals on the bottom level there. They're very trusting of everyone. And I think that's because they're basically insulated from everything that's happening in the country. These are the managerial elites who are running the institutions, right? And we can see that because in the next slide, asking about the desire for radical institutional change, only 2% of them actually wanted to quote from the report, burn down the institutions. So those are the people who are running the country. They're comfortable, but actually no one else is. Yeah? And there's quite a lot of radical sentiment in here. Also a lot of sort of grey areas, huge grey areas around attitudes towards things like climate change, for example. Again, I'm sure Ed Miliband was rather upset about this, but you can see here across the whole country, essentially, you've got nearly 70% of the country sort of neither this way or the other particularly. They don't have a firm opinion on whether we're doing the right thing or the wrong thing on climate change. I think that's a debate that has still not been firmly won, and I'm very happy about that because institutionally, we're certainly going in the wrong direction. Interesting insight into attitudes around immigration. Actually got 46% think immigration should be significantly reduced, 16% think it should be reduced slightly. And actually those numbers are probably 20 to 30% higher given how the calculations have been done in the report. There's quite a lot of manipulation and bias built into the methodology through weighting, but also the way that questions are being phrased. So actually we can see here on attitudes towards growth versus fairness. The questions are either we should close the gap between rich and poor, even if it means the country doesn't get richer overall, or on the other end of the spectrum, we should aim for everyone to be better off, even if it means the rich get more of the growth than the poor. But there's never any question in here saying, you know, should we could close the gap between rich and poor while at the same time increasing the wealth of the nation. Right? I think this is actually designed to demonstrate and reinforce polarization and to fit us into these entrenched and ultimately intractable political positions. However, one other thing that we are united on is our distaste for the current Labour government. And we can see here that even amongst Labour supporters, people who voted for Labour last year, a full 40% of them would vote for someone else today, which I personally find quite encouraging.
But Ben, thank you very much for that excellent overview. And let's just stress for the audience, many people picking up on this in the chat box, we are being attacked. The country is being ripped apart. And this is another indication of non-government organisations measuring the effect. But in measuring the effect, they are, of course, helping us to see what's actually happening and also to judge who we can go to in our own communities in order to get more support. Now, perhaps that's a great point to bring Diane into today's news, because Diane, you've been out and about looking at what's been happening in County Durham, where local councillors are taking the initiative and fighting the system themselves. What have you got for us?
Yes, thanks, Brian. Hello, Ben. It's great to be here today. I'm happy to report that I have good news today. And I'm saying that because even though as the country continues to crumble, we have to take action. Otherwise, it will continue to do so. And I'm here with a message today of some examples that we can do as we act locally. I'd like to first review last week's report very briefly that I gave on Durham County Council, that they were having a vote last week to review the net zero spending and policies that are in alignment, of course, with the Paris Agreement and UK-wide policies. And as Karen Allison, who's one of the newly elected Reform Council members, said, that Reform were, in fact, elected with a mandate to review net zero and to identify efficiencies and savings for the people of County Durham. It's important to note that Reform gained very substantial political control in last year's local elections in this county by winning 30 seats out of the 98 elected. So that's quite a substantial amount. And so, of course, they had to act with what they said they would be doing, which, of course, would be looking at, among other things, net zero. Now, in County Durham specifically, they had a climate emergency response plan that went over several years. It started in 2019 when this was first voted on, when there was a Lib Dem-led coalition. There have been 3 iterations of this plan, and this is obviously going to be the last one now that it's ending. There was one from 2020 to 2022, and then 2022 to 24. And then 2024 to present. So this was the thing that they were voting against. So I will get into that in a minute. But first of all, just to set the scene for the meeting, when I first arrived at the meeting at the county hall last Wednesday morning, you can see that there were people out front. They were just standing there. It was obviously some kind of protest. I didn't quite know exactly what was going on until I was able to spend some time before the meeting looking at what they were doing. So we see various signs that I took some photographs of, for example, one saying there's no planet B. So a lot of people protesting the rescinding of the climate emergency, as well as other things that you would kind of expect to go along with that. So other people that sort of campaign on similar things. So I have a short clip here just so we can see a few seconds of the kind of speeches and what it looked like out in the audience.
Ocean on climate change, which of course is incredibly important. We've also come from Stand Up to Racism City of Durham, along with members of the City of Durham Labour Party, because we are really, really concerned about the increase in racist incidents that are happening since this new party came into power here.
So lots that had nothing to do with what was being voted on. So while that was going on, I talked to somebody on the side who was a part of a protest talking about houses and multiple occupation, which is a very serious concern for the county. And let's hear what he had to say.
With both Nolan, we live in East Durham, which is an area of high deprivation and disadvantage, and always has been, and that hasn't changed. And all HMOs do is contribute to greater disadvantage and deprivation. So that's part of the protest as to why we're trying to stop this proliferation and concentration of HMOs in a very poor deprived area. That's one of the most powerful and compelling arguments.
Okay, thanks. Thank you. Hopefully you could hear what he had to say. In the background, you heard all the chanting going on in the background, which was the crowd saying, "What do we want? Climate justice. What do we want? What do we want? Climate emergency." So it was back and forth. It was really hard to hear what he was saying in some cases, but that was what it felt like to be there. So when the council meeting opened at 10 o'clock in the morning, we first went through some questions that were asked, and these were some interesting things to take a look at. So before we got into the vote, which of course was the thing that I was there for, there were some other things that happened that were kind of interesting. There was one question, there were several questions raised from the public. This one was from Ms. Rochelle Lane, a former Labour councillor, which was put onto the screen. And her question was, as Reform County councillors for CM Division have publicly declared they will not attend diversity, equality, and inclusion, or DEI training, including any such British anti-man and anti-woman nonsense, can the leader of the council explain why certain Reform councillors are refusing to attend DEI training and how this refusal may impact their ability to make legally informed and compliant decisions during committee meetings, particularly when matters concerning DEI are discussed? So the short version of the answer came from Councillor Andrew Husband, who is the Durham County Council leader from Reform UK, saying, quote, "There is no requirement in law for councillors to complete EDI training." So it was interesting to hear that and then to see how the vote works. So if we go on to the vote, first of all, there was a motion to extend the time for debate, which would sort of go against the usual council rules. And they voted overwhelmingly, as you'll see, they voted for not extending the time. And so then we went on from there to look at what the actual vote was and what the motion was. So the motion, as presented by Darren Grimes, who's the deputy leader of Reform UK, was firstly to rescind the climate emergency declaration made on the 20th of February 2019. As we can see here, there was an amendment by Councillor Wilkes, who was the former Lib Dem who was previously in charge, to remove that. And what he proposed was to keep the climate emergency declaration, but also to maintain the care emergency that was being declared in favor of children's social care provision. So we can go on to see what happened with the voting results next. It was interesting that the amendment that was from Councillor Wilkes was 64 against, 24 in favor, and 1 abstention. Darren Grimes' motion, which as it was presented to rescind the climate emergency and in favor of care of children, was 62 for, 7 against, and 7 abstentions. So of course, they were very, very happy about this result. So this is an exclusive to UK Column, because I have to say that what happened was after the vote, I didn't see any other media outlets present. It was just me and my secret cameraman, who could not be revealed for privacy reasons on his behalf. But I have 3 short clips here from 3 councillors. The first one here is Councillor Ian Thetford.
It just sounds expensive, because if you look at the plan for change, it's millions of pounds, right?
Well, offshore wind's 4 times more expensive than onshore.
Right,
because it's very expensive.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. But it's also we've already got existing wind farms. We've got Dogger Bank existing.
Right.
What we don't do, is we don't site battery storage close to the shore where the power comes in. Store it. Wind energy is intermittent.
Right.
So that's intermittent. Solar power is very peaky.
Especially in this country.
So both of those technologies, they require an element of storage before they go on the national grid.
Yeah.
That's what people don't understand. They just think, we'll do loads of solar, we'll do loads of wind. That doesn't work that way. You need to sort the energy out before it goes into the national grid. Okay?
Yeah.
But,
that makes sense. Okay. Thank you. Yeah.
So as you can see, he gave me a lot to think about there. He had some very practical ideas for deal with actual solutions for what could be actual climate issues. Next, I have a short interview clip from Councillor Kenny Hope. Brought up some interesting information about the opposition in the meeting. Do you want to say something about that?
Yeah, so one of the opposition was, he had a lot to say. He basically, in my eyes, was a hypocrite. He drives in and out of County Hall pretty much daily with his work van, and he is quite keen on claiming his expenses. Now he's coming in in a diesel guzzling van, and then he's shouting about the climate. Well, it doesn't make sense to me. Also, what I stated on is the production of lithium batteries and the silica and stuff for the solar panels. Now, it is widely recognised and reported on that this is being done using child and adult slave labour. Now, we abolished the slave labour trade within the 1800s. How can we now start supporting that because we want to go down this green agenda? It's just nonsensical.
Yeah, because they have to get the materials from somewhere, and that's what seems to be forgotten, is that it gets extracted from somewhere in Africa or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then whatever the people go through to get it is really not good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
100%. We can't forget the root of where all this stuff's coming from, the material it's coming from,
Absolutely.
and how, how people are treated doing this. Child and adult slave labour is absolutely not acceptable, and we should not be part of that whatsoever. If the stuff was proven that it was dug out the ground and all of that sort of stuff in a way that doesn't use child and adult slave labour, and that the CO2 emissions are, going to be reduced long term, then fine. But it's not.
I would say, as a resident of County Durham, I don't want my council tax to go to support that kind of activity, personally.
Neither do I.
And so the final interview that I have here is from Councillor Darren Grimes, who, as I said, raised the motion himself. I shared the full video on Twitter last week, or X, and it's had over 18,000 views since I shared it on Thursday, but I have just a short clip here.
Darren, I just want to say thank you for such an excellent performance today.
Oh, thank you very much.
In the meeting. How did you feel it went?
Well, apart from me losing my voice and starting to sound like Mrs. May when she gave that infamous speech and the letters started falling off the wall behind her, apart from that, I thought it went very well, yeah. I think that the team was totally united, and actually we've made clear to County Durham that we are going to prioritise them over virtue signalling and fads, frankly.
Yeah, I have to say, just as a resident, speaking personally of County Durham, I would like to see my council tax money go to helping people who really need it. And, my feeling is that a lot of this climate finance actually goes to sort of these companies and gets through the City of London. And, I've looked into this quite a bit, and that's not personally, and I think that a lot of people would feel that way as well if they knew how that's where their money was going.
Absolutely, yeah. I think actually the mandate that we had from the public was to actually scrutinise all of that expenditure and make sure that we're getting the best bang for our buck, which is, the council tax bill that's been put forward to everybody goes up and up and up, but the services don't get better. So actually, we need to rebalance the scale so it actually delivers fairness for the public as well.
Right. So do you think that you had pretty much unanimous support and agreement across Reform UK in that meeting, or were there some oppositions to what you moved? Or
no, 100% agreement. Actually, right. I think the difference between us and the Tories is that we are a totally united party, united behind the movement and what the cause is. And that, for me, is a really beautiful thing. And I'm especially proud of the whole group today, actually. I thought they did our party and our county a great service today.
Yeah, I think so too. And it was interesting as well to hear some of the supporting councillors who spoke on your behalf. And also, I was very excited when the amendment was turned down. That was a wonderful moment. How did you feel when that happened?
Oh, glorious! To defeat the Lib Dems gets me out of bed on the morning.
Of course.
So just to close this segment, I just want to mention the coverage by the BBC. So obviously I didn't see anyone from the BBC in attendance, but of course they had to weigh in. And mostly they quoted from the Mark Wilkes, who had originally started the climate emergency agreement, saying that the social care issues had nothing whatsoever to do with climate change. And they focused a lot on the protesters, including one sign that was apparently held up by one boy that read, "If you care, allow me to have a future." So they're using the children to push the climate change agenda, according to the propaganda presented by the BBC, which I think is absolutely disgusting, Brian.
I totally agree, Diane. But the first thing I want to say is what an excellent job those councillors did. It's very difficult for many of them because they're newly elected into a council position, and this can be quite challenging for them, but they are learning very quickly, and it doesn't matter what party they're from. In this case, Reform doing well, but there are many other very small parties. There's also independents. These people need huge support because they are now at the front end challenging the system. Now, I'm just going to take you to a quick video. This was actually a Labour Party election, part of their election manifesto. Let's just have a look at what Keir Starmer's team was saying a little while ago.
This cost of living crisis comes on the back of decades of high inequality and low growth. Now, the number of people in England waiting to start routine hospital treatment has risen to a new record high.
Rishi Sunak gave a speech rolling back on the government's net zero pledges.
The rising cost of mortgages is causing misery across the country.
The record-breaking week for numbers crossing the channel this year so far.
We know growth is the answer. It's higher wages, stronger communities, more vibrant high streets, public services that lift you up, less poverty, more opportunity, warmer homes, healthier food, holidays, meals out, more cash in your pocket, an end to the suffocating cost of living crisis.
We will set up a proper national champion, Great British Energy. Some nation will become a clean energy superpower. Why not Britain?
An NHS where prevention comes first, where care is closer to home, where patients have more control. The biggest expansion of NHS training in its history.
Whatever the obstacles to opportunity, wherever the barriers to hope, my Labour government will tear them down.
We'll get 13,000 extra police on our streets. A mission-driven government that will end sticking plaster politics. We'll unlock the pride and purpose that is in every community. We'll give this country its confidence, its hope, its future back.
So, Ben, I'm going to apologise for bringing that video clip in just before your segment, but I wanted to remind people of the absolute hypocrisy of Keir Starmer with what he promised to do for UK and what he's actually doing at the moment. Billions and billions of pounds going into the war in Ukraine, million dead Ukrainian soldiers, British arms and weapons and money going into Israel to prosecute the war in Gaza. We've got damage in Yemen, wherever we go in the world, war, and we've got Keir Starmer's government behind it. So the idea that this government is helping to build a better Britain is absolutely laughable. He is destroying Britain, and we are now really starting to be able to focus on the techniques being used. Let's bring you in, Ben, and Sadiq Khan, because, of course, this man is, in my opinion, up to no good and on a world stage.
He certainly is. I mean, at least Starmer, he's talking about building back Britain. Is that what he said? Building a better Britain. You know, even if he isn't, at least he's talking about it. Sadiq Khan is supposedly the mayor of London, but let's have a little look at what he's been up to over the past couple of weeks.
This is why London and Accra need each other. Her Majesty, pleasure to meet you. How are you? Pleasure to meet you. You're welcome. It's impossible to come to Accra and not pay a courtesy call to your Royal Majesty. London and Accra have a lot in common. Our boundless creative energy, our passion for music, food and culture, and our bold spirit of innovation and entrepreneurship. Our cities also have a heavy history. It's an uncomfortable truth that London played a key role in the organisation and funding of the transatlantic slave trade. But standing here, I feel optimistic that despite our difficult past, our two cities, our two nations are ready to write a new chapter. And I'm excited at the prospect of what we can do together to build a brighter, more prosperous and fairer future for all. The establishment of Imperial Global Ghana is a landmark moment. For the first time, a UK university, a London university, has a permanent base in Africa that's dedicated to science and technology. And I don't think it will be the last.
We hope that your visit today will act as a springboard for developing mutual beneficial partnerships, economic stability of both London and Accra. We look forward to a long-lasting, fruitful relationship.
So Sadiq Khan is travelling around the world like some imperial viceroy going on a trade mission to Africa, talking about making amends for slavery while there are still 40 million estimated slaves alive today. many of them in Africa working on the clean energy systems that he's a big proponent of. You can see him here in one of the frames on the right-hand side, standing in front of the Ghana Independence Arch, which was built in 1957 when they were freed from the empire. And yet he's there literally to promote the imperial agenda. You know, the clue is in the name. It's Imperial Global Ghana. It's an imperial college. It's backed by the Gates Foundation, amongst many others. But, you know, it is still an imperial entity just because he is of a different ethnicity, a supposed person of colour. The guard, I suppose, has been let down, right? And what are they promoting? Genomics. So we can get that back on screen. We can see the genomic medicine building. So this is genetic engineering. This is all the fourth industrial revolution. If I can just click on, sorry, my click has disappeared. There we go. We can see they're promoting smart farms. So this is all the globalist fourth industrial revolution agenda, and importantly, funded by the City of London. So we can see on the right-hand side there, he's talking about the economic stability of London. What he really means is the city, which isn't really London at all. And actually, we can see here, this is from the past few weeks as well, an event held at the Mansion House, where he's speaking alongside the Lord Mayor of London, which I believe shows at least where some of his loyalties lie. This is another perfect example of what I call the unholy alliance between money and power, right? The city and these political supposed elites. He's also representing, of course, C40 cities, and I believe this is where his true allegiances lie. He's actually the co-president of C40 cities. It's controlled by the uber-Zionist American billionaire Michael Bloomberg up in the top left-hand side there, who's also joined on the board, interestingly, this is a recent development, by a key Sadiq Khan lieutenant, Mehdi Koban, who I've spoken about many times previously, the sort of MI6, US State Department, Rothschild family creation, who's also been in London recently, glad-handing the African diaspora here at the African Achievers Award a couple of weeks ago, which again I think is a perfect demonstration of the constituencies that Khan and the people around him are actually serving rather than the people of London.
I think you've absolutely hit that one on the head, Ben. The wining and dining, fine food, it's all there. This is imperial takeover, and Africa the target as opposed to being people that we're trying to help. No help for people in trouble in London. He's jet-setting around the world, helping to create climate change, I would have thought. But the hypocrisy is breathtaking, and we are going to continue to call these people and their policies out. Now, we'd like to say a huge thank you to everybody that's been supporting UK Column over the years. We will be 20 years, our 20-year anniversary next January 2026. So thank you very much to everybody who's helped support us, whether it's through making donations or actually taking out those monthly or annual memberships. So a huge thank you if you're one of the people that does support us financially, because you make this happen. Now, as you will have noticed over recent weeks and months, UK Column content has increased. Very pleased to say tonight at 7 p.m. on germ warfare, we've got Mike Yeadon talking about or asking the question, is science dead? And coming up on Thursday, I'm also very pleased to have the first of what should be a series of interviews with Jewish people who are now starting to question what's actually happening in the Middle East and what is actually taking place with the support of Zionist Israel. So on Thursday at 1 o'clock, I have an interview with Lynn Lopez Salcedo, and this is entitled From Zionist to Anti-Zionist, Memories, Dreams and Visions of Peace. I think you'll find it a fascinating interview, and we have more to come. I'd also like to remind people that Totnes this Friday at 7 o'clock, Andrew Bridgen will be speaking, and Patrick Henningsen will be hosting. The UK column team will be there. Mike and myself will be there. And we look forward to seeing anybody who's prepared to come along and listen to what Andrew has to say. He is an exceptionally brave individual because the abuse he's absorbed from mainstream media and press since speaking out is truly incredible. And we know there are going to be some hostile elements in Totnes, unfortunately. That won't stop the event going ahead. Please come along and see us there. And also I'd like to give a reminder that UK column on location in York coming up for Saturday, 18th of October, 2025. Beautiful location, absolutely wonderful hotel. We're looking to get the 400 seats sold in order to springboard us on to a weekend event in 2026. Tickets for York will be on sale from the 28th of July, so watch out for those. And it will be your support at this event in York that is going to make the difference for us doing what everybody or so many people has asked us, and that is, can we do a weekend event? Well, we're going to do our best in 2026. So come along to York and help us make that very special weekend next year happen. Now, where does that take us? And we're going to come on to the subject of physical materials in the digital age. And Diane, we bring you back again because you've been out and about. You're meeting people who are campaigning. Tell us what you've been doing and what people are themselves doing in order to fight back against this horrific system which has installed itself in the UK.
Yes, Brian, I want to say that, first of all, I think that what they did to us in 2020 and beyond really, I think, stopped the feeling of community, the feeling of what it is like to be around other people, the feeling of working together. And I personally believe that the whole technocracy that was behind that was very deliberate. So this past weekend, as has been announced on UK Column for the past few weeks, I attended the Thetford Truth and Freedom Festival, and I was asked to give a talk on the topic of the importance of physical materials in the digital age. So as you'll see here, my first slide that shows this image of Aowolf, of Monsters and Middle School. So one of the many reasons why it's so important to preserve physical materials is that they're changing things, and they're changing things that we might have known from our childhood, that people might have known from previous, literature, previous things that are now being changed digitally. And when things are changed digitally, or when they're removed, we don't know it quite as well as when things have been sitting on our shelves for years. So I gave a talk on this. So there's just a photo here of me with my UK column banner, which was donated by Jenny, who made one of our banners for us in Cheltenham and is now behind me here in my own studio, along with one of the organizers, Mark, who's up there in the front. And so that was me sort of giving my talk on the Friday. So there were several talks throughout the Friday and Saturday. Overall, I would say that the focus was on bringing people together and looking at alternatives. They passed out business cards that said that the aim of the festival was to raise your frequency and vibration with great music, great information, and some great company. And I think all of those were definitely achieved. So, for example, some of the talks were focusing on parallel systems, as Ben talks about frequently. There were talks about the spiritual war that Brian talks about frequently, and what happens when we awaken to these entities and the agenda. Bob from Thetford Council Watch, who Brian has interviewed previously, was in attendance, and I spoke with him for a while. There was some legal advice on how to protect your assets using trusts, and including the issues around inheritance tax. The idea of direct democracy, which is the right to call for referendums on important local issues and other things. So basically bringing back real democracy to the people where it belongs originally. Kim Isherwood was not there in person, but she did give a recorded talk about the work that she continues to do, the excellent work with Public Protection Wales. There was a veteran called Chris Thrall, who is a YouTuber, who gave a talk about how he is planning to climb Mount Everest in 2026. And he is going to do this to support veterans dealing with complex PTSD. And he's asking for everyone for financial donations to help him do that. And there was a really good discussion around the English Constitution at the end of Saturday. I have some photos here to kind of give some idea of what was happening throughout the weekend. The first one here is some people from a group called the Community Assembly of the British Isles. You can look them up on their website and get more information. They were saying that they are working with individuals and local communities to help preserve and protect our core rights and values. There are also some other stalls available. There was one here from Louise's Radiant Art. She was selling some items that I may have spent some money at on her booth there, which is, we can see that on the next slide. If we can bring up a picture of her stall, there's her Louise's stall. There was another one there called Solar Sphere Healing Oils and Tinctures, which offers natural approaches to dealing with health issues. There's the stall there for some things for sale. There was a natural healer we can see on the next slide called Stephen Carl, where he had a little place set up where you could deal with that and sort of get a spiritual healing from him. And we also had in attendance, we had someone who was, I guess, claiming to be Thomas Paine, born in Thetford. He played a role in the American and French revolutions, if you don't know who he is, but he advocated for the revolutions, and he was a Thetford native. What was really interesting to see was the amazing support for UK Column that was throughout the festival, and I had a really great time with some of this. Talking to these people. Here's some signs that were originally provided to us. I believe this was at our Bristol event last year. So I've got an updated version from the person who made those, saying UK Column is the antidote to mainstream propaganda. What else do we have here? We have a photo with me with one of our members with that very thing on his T-shirt. So we had some really great conversations, and he told me some information about what he's doing with his MP. There's a picture of Jenny. And she set up her own little stand with copies of the light paper and some UK Column information, including, if you can see it at the bottom there, a screenshot of Charles and Brian together at the desk. It's a very large printout of a screenshot that she had available. What else do we have here? Some more photos. This was a lady who wanted me to show that she had her badges on her hat. So on one side, we have Watch UK Column News. On the other side, we have I Love CO2. So those are both, of course, badges that we have for sale in the shop. She wanted to make sure that I had photographed those. And so some other things we have here, some people made some stickers of all of us presenters saying safe and effective around each of our photos. So I have several sheets of these stickers for everyone, of all of us presenters. It was good to see this kind of effort being put into, and I think that we truly are safe and effective at UK Column compared to other news outlets and compared to other things that they could be doing to us, Brian. So I'll have some more about this in extra. I have some more photos to share, but overall, I just want to say that it was a great weekend and a great chance for people to come together with like minds to solve the real problems that are happening on the ground and practical solutions for what we can do about them.
Diane, thank you very much for being there, and thank you for that report. And yes, it is great to see more and more people who are doing something. This is the start, isn't it? Standing up to be counting, doing your research, challenging the system and getting more people on board. So I think we've got some really encouraging news in our UK Column news content today. And we know this is going to grow. And of course, the more people that give support to these sorts of initiatives, the faster they're going to grow. Okay, Ben, let's bring you back with us, because is Christianity going to be a focal point for the pushback against this pernicious system in UK? And should we trust Danny Kruger?
The answer to the first question is yes. The answer to the second question is I'm not so sure. But let's have a little listen to what he said in Parliament at the end of last week.
It is an honour to stand here in this empty chamber to speak about the original purpose of this space, which was a chapel in the Church of England. The old chamber of the House of Commons, on which this space is modelled after the Great Fire of 1834, was St Stephen's Chapel, formerly a royal church, given by the heirs of Henry VIII to Parliament to serve as its debating chamber. And Madam Deputy Speaker, your chair stands on the altar steps, and the table with the dispatch boxes is where the lectern stood. And I mention this because the link between this place and the Church of England isn't merely ceremonial. The prayers we say here at the start of every day aren't just a nod to tradition. Our democracy is founded on Christian faith. And indeed, this Parliament remains the law-giving power of the Church of England. We in this place have the responsibility to approve or disapprove the doctrine and the rules of the Church. And that is as it should be, because the Church of England is not some private club, just another eccentric denomination. The Church is the chaplain to the nation, and through the parish system, in which every square inch of England has its local church and its local priest, we are all members, we all belong, even if you never set foot in your church from one year to the next, even if you don't believe in its teachings, it is your church, and you are its member.
So Christian revival is on the agenda. I'm a fan. Is it going to come from Parliament? I'm not so sure. I don't think it should come from Parliament. Is it going to come from Danny Kruger? I don't know. I can't quite work it out. There was quite a flutter of excitement about this at the end of last week in various bits of the internet, which I happen to frequent. But if I look at Kruger, I'm not sure that I view this as being an honest effort. He is a Conservative Party insider. He's the current MP for Devizes and now East Wiltshire since 2019. There's been a change to the constituency there. He's a former leader writer at The Telegraph, a co-founder of Only Connect, which was a charity focused on people coming out of prison. And he's very much part of the establishment, right? He was a former speechwriter for David Cameron and Ian Duncan Smith back in the early noughties, which would explain why it was a very, very good, very well-polished and well-delivered speech, right? But at the time, he was famously quoted as saying, and Brian talks about this a lot, we plan to introduce a period of creative destruction into the public services. For me, this makes him one of David Cameron's change agents. Yeah, and he's been working back in the Tory party for Cameron and for Boris Johnson. And he sort of sits at the nexus of the destruction of the country over the past 20 years. And it seems to me very convenient now for him to be stepping forward and saying, oh, goodness, we've got to sort this out. And it's not going to come from politics, it's going to come from the church. Also, if you go to his personal website, it says here that his politics are probably best described as communitarian, which is another huge red flag, right? The communitarian systems, the big society that David Cameron pushed forward based on ideas from Saul Alinsky, that is a radical left-wing communitarian approach, right? This is sort of neo-Marxism writ large, and this is written directly on his About Me page, what he believes. And importantly, there's no mention on his What I Believe page about Christianity. Yeah, no, so back to the speech. It was a great speech. Go and watch it. It's only 10 minutes long. He talks about a wind blowing, a storm coming, that when it hits, we're going to find out if our house is built on rock or sand. He speaks of the importance of Christianity to the nation at its founding. Yeah, the fact that England, uniquely among the nations of the world, was founded, created consciously, he says, on the basis of the Bible and importantly on the story of the Hebrew people. And he does tie us very closely theologically to the Jewish people. I noticed that. It's impossible not to in the current context, everything going on around us. He talked about a fight back against another religion, not Islam, that he did reference, but actually this religion of woke. So he describes this combination of paganism and Christian heresies and the cult of modernism and an ideology of power that needs to be exercised from the public discourse. And he views Christianity as being the way of achieving that. But then on the flip side, and I found this quite difficult to understand, he talks about Christian values as being freedom and tolerance. This word tolerance, where actually I don't believe is a Christian value. And I think it's probably fair to say is one of the things that's got us into this mess in the first place, too much tolerance. And I would remind people of Matthew 10:34. Think not that I come to send peace on earth. I came not to send peace, but a sword. Much more on this to come.
Ben, thank you very much. Yeah, lots of questions about that, and it's stirred up quite a lot of discussion in the chat box today. So we will definitely focus in on Mr. Kruger more in the future. Let's end with a little bit of a story, because a little while ago I was approached by a journalist from the very big French media organisation, Associated French Press. And the lady was called Anna Malpas, and she sent me an email. Let's have a look. Just pop this up on the screen. Here we are. It said, "Dear Brian, I'm a journalist at AFP News Agency working in London. I'm interested in alternative media like UK Column and would like to organise an interview with you if possible." She gave me a number. Best regards from Anna. Well, I went to have a look at her, and very quickly I found out that she was labelled as disinformation reporter in Europe. And I thought, my goodness, I wonder what's coming here. So I decided to email her back, and this is what I said. "Thank you for your email. Would you be kind enough to tell me a little bit more about what you would like to achieve in the interview? What is your interest in UK Column, and what would you like to cover? It would also be helpful to know a little more about you and your work at AFP. Do you have a summary CV and perhaps 3 of your articles that you can share that you feel best reflect your work in a related subject area?" Well, fair enough. She did respond. She said, "Thank you, Brian, for getting back to me. I've been looking at independent media outlets like the Light newspaper, the Conservative Woman and UK Column, which I wasn't very aware of before, but which seem to be expanding since the pandemic. While they're different, I see overlaps in terms of topics, contributors and readers, viewers. I met some UK Column fans at a rally in London this month, and your posts and videos often come up. So my main questions are about why people are looking at this media, what topics and opinions are aired, the use of social media, what the business models are, also what links there are with similar media outlets in other countries. Happy to answer any questions." And then she does also respond sort of to my question about her career, because she says, "I'm fairly freshly back in the UK after working in Ukraine and Poland, and I've spent most of my career in Russia, so most of my stories are not very relevant, but here are some links." And she sent me 3 stories. Absolutely right, they weren't very relevant. But I decided to be a good investigative journalist and go and have a look at Anna in a bit more detail. This is part of Muckrack. Apologies to Muckrack. I should have their header on the top of this, but here you can see you've got an image for Anna, which is the same image on her X page. And the first article and the most recent is "Brothers blame influencer mum's conspiracy theories after sister's death." And this is Anna's own version of Mariana Spring's vicious hit piece on Kate Shemirani. And if you have a look at the article itself by Anna Malpas, you can see that she's absolutely mimicking Mariana Spring's vicious attack on that family. But when I got deeper into AFP, of course, you discover they're an absolutely vast media organisation. But not only that, they're in bed with the political side of the European Union, and via their media lab creation, they're involved in research and development for the EU, which of course is funded by the EU. And I'll let people have a look at this particular diagram on screen, but it's showing how they are supposedly protecting citizens from misinformation and disinformation via this quite complex surveillance system. Now, the boss of the organisation, Fabrice Fries, he's got a very interesting quote available publicly, which says the 3 big press agencies do not play the same role of gatekeeper that we did 20 years ago. And he goes on to say news agencies can no longer only report facts, they must now debunk fake news. And this is a new mission for AFP. Well, if you do a bit more work, you find that this is heavily embedded into the European Union and their research and innovation unit. And amongst other things, the EU is crowing that they're going to be using AI in order to take down misinformation and disinformation. So I responded to Anna and I said, thank you for the response, outlining your interests and providing the links that you have. Your response does raise a couple of questions, so I'll be interested in your answers. Your LinkedIn page simply shows your career starting November 2020. How did you progress into journalism and how did you come to specialise in reporting from Ukraine, Poland and Russia? Mainstream media journalists are usually quite open on LinkedIn regarding their education, training, and career progression in journalism. And there was a little bit more. LinkedIn also describes you as disinformation reporter in Europe. Is disinformation reporting your professional role with AFP? And if so, is this the reason you're now showing an interest in the Light, the Conservative Woman and UK column? Is your approach to the UK column linked to any of Associated French Press's 14 existing European fact-checking projects? Lastly, I understand that you may be working with and or sharing research work and stories with Marianna Spring, disinformation expert at the BBC. Is this the case? Well, I'm happy to tell our audience today that the reply from Anna was absolute silence. She's run away and presumably asking the telling questions about what she was really up to and intending has put her as a cat on a hot tin roof. Ben, we're going to end with a video here which should also produce a bit of a smile on our audience's face. What have you got for us?
If you don't laugh, you'll cry, Brian. This is the list.
Well, you got your bucket list, your grocery list, your list of things to do. You got a list of all your wishes, that's a wish list, dude. You got your Amazon and Santa Claus and Tooth Fairy too. But I know a list that don't exist, and buddy, so do you. It's the Epstein list, it's a mystery list with a twist. It's a myth of a list that we all just missed. Be an optimist, not a pessimist. If you wish to persist, it's probably best you forget that list. Now what were we talking about? I don't remember, but I can sleep a lot better at night. Yeah, life can just go along, knowing there's 10,000 hours of sunshine and flowers and nobody doing a damn thing wrong. Hear no, see no, damn Bongino, Cash Patel. Well, I wouldn't wanna be a sweating men with bulging eyes. Now tell me them fellas ain't compromised. Any implicated dude will tell you, anybody on the big list knows just how far the folks in charge will go to keep the status quo. So when the war bell rings, the song that they'll sing is a song that we well know. I-oh, so it's off to war I go. Well, they said it's gonna fix it, but now they're all complicit. They-oh, so it's off to war we go. In the pour after war, what else are we for? They-oh.
Music and a sense of humour does a lot. Ben, thank you very much for that. Ben, Diane, thank you very much for joining me today. And thank you to our audience, wherever you are in the world. And we know you are spread worldwide. So this is really wonderful stuff. More and more people discovering UK column. Help us spread the word and bring some more people into our audience. Now, we must end the news here, but we will be back with UK column extra for our members. And we will see members in a few moments. For the rest of the audience, news will be back at 1 o'clock on Wednesday. See you then. Bye-bye.